Develop positive ways of dealing with conflict. Evaluate the cost of conflict. Analyze the impact of conflict to employee engagement and performance. One of the most important things when dealing with conflict is to remain calm. It's the quickest way to de-escalate a conflict situation. Listen to understand. Being able to use your listening skills will ensure that you are being respectful and truly learning what is the cause of the conflict from the other person's perspective. When listening to understand, you must place your position on hold. You are not to silently think about your next statement. This is the time when you surrender your thoughts to the other party and respect their understanding of the problem. Focus on the positive. Look at what you have in common. Draw a clear line between the important aspects of what you both want. There is always a common thread between two individuals. Stick to the facts. This is the moment to be logical. Focus only on the facts of the concern or matter of discord. And remember to be respectful of yourself and others when choosing your words to present your position. Focus on the goal. What you want to achieve. Don't allow yourself to get into the weeds. In other words, it really doesn't matter how the goal is achieved. The truth is achieving the goal. This does not mean you don't have to follow policy or rules. It simply means that you keep your energy on achieving the intended goal. This helps situations from getting emotional. Getting your questions answered. Getting your questions answered at times, you can easily diffuse conflict just by ensuring your questions are answered. This enables you to work from an educated position, a place of common understanding. In other words, once your questions are addressed, you may find out that there is no conflict. It was just a misunderstanding. Make sure your questions are open-ended and do not allow for yes/no responses. This will keep the lines of communication open and more dialogue will ensue. Knowing the right timing. When addressing conflict, it's imperative that you pick the right time and setting that will foster an open dialogue. When faced with conflict, it is critical that you take the time to decide if this is the time to address your concerns. Timing is everything with conflict. I call this the window of opportunity. If you wait for the right opportunity, it may mean you walk away at a moment of conflict strategically. Sometimes it's better to revisit an issue than to address it when the emotions are running high. You want to make sure that you have the best opportunity to address your concerns, your questions, or your opinions. Forcing a conversation when the timing is not right will only escalate the problem versus managing to solution. Making the business case for managing conflict is critical. Many may not realize the costs associated with unresolved conflict. Many of you may know it all too well. Let's look at some examples of the cost of conflict. Develop positive ways of dealing with conflict. Evaluate the cost of conflict. Analyze the impact of conflict to employee engagement and performance. Let's go ahead and look at the cost of unresolved conflict. When conflict arises from any of the number of reasons that we've just talked about and is not resolved in a timely fashion, it becomes destructive. It can cause problems beyond the obvious, losses in productivity, morale, and harmony. Continuing conflict between coworkers or teams can cause employees to become disengaged. The more extreme cases can lead to physical violence or litigation proceedings. The many costs of unresolved conflict include the cost due to decreased productivity. Decreased productivity is because people are focusing on the conflict situation versus their role and their function in their job. Cost of unresolved conflict can also be increased staff turnover. Increased staff turnover could include positions go unfilled, the recruiting time that takes place with respect to the open position, training and development of the new team member, and loss of institutional knowledge. When conflict goes unresolved, you can also have an increase in absenteeism. Employees become actively disengaged. There's no enthusiasm or interest to participate in work functions or their transactional roles on a daily basis. Worst case scenario is that conflict ends in litigation. Things to consider with respect to the costs of litigation are legal fees, arbitrator or mediation costs, internal costs as team members' time is used to respond to requests and discovery demands, and also the focus is not on the productivity or the tasks at hand, but what the litigation is about. When managers have to manage conflict at an extreme level, their idea and focus and energy are taken away from the primary resource for why they're there, is managing their team and their productivity costs. So time is shifted directly from their responsibilities and project management to the issues at hand. Through this module's content, you have been introduced to the concepts of recognizing the different types of conflict, embracing positive conflict as a means to improve performance, differentiate the causes of conflict to assist with the resolution process, and evaluate the costs of unresolved conflict. In summary, conflict is inevitable. It's not that conflict exists, it's how you handle the conflict and ensure that it does not become destructive. Conflict comes from a number of resources and sources, and when conflict does arise, it's most effective to manage it immediately so it doesn't engage in a further dysfunctional level into the outer workings of the department or the division. And most importantly, communication.